Transport for London was accused of indirect racial discrimination in the High Court today for making minicab drivers sit English tests. Uber launched a legal challenge with 3 of its drivers who are from Hungary, Bulgaria and Pakistan. The company's lawyer argued there was no evidence that their restricted abilities to read and write English had led to problems. Uber says the new rules could lead to 70,000 applicants failing to get a licence. Here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
He's lived here for almost 25 years. In that time, Hassan Yasser has driven vans, lorries and minicabs. For the past 2 years, he's worked as an Uber driver in London. But last month, Mr. Yasser failed his compulsory English test after being asked to write about the planet Mars.
Really have to be very specialized to answer this question, especially about Mars. Asking me how you know about Mars. I don't know anything about Mars.
How good do you think your English is?
I think my English is good enough for my job, but it's not good for being question for the Mars. I don't know. I have never been in Mars.
Under the new rules, all of London's minicab drivers will be expected to pass a written and oral test unless they have a GCSE or equivalent qualification in any subject which proves they've studied in English. Transport for London argues it's essential that all taxi and minicab drivers can communicate with their passengers in English. But Uber's lawyer told the High Court the new exams amounted to indirect racial discrimination.
Write an essay for your teacher about a festival in a country you know.
These are some of the tasks set by examiners.
Write an article for a school or college magazine saying what you think is the best way to get fit.
Write an essay for your teacher about the problem of river pollution in a city or town.
Write an article for an educational website about learning a new language.
The new tests don't apply to London's traditional cabbies. Not surprisingly, they're in favour of this hurdle for minicab drivers.
It's a basic requirement for an 11-year-old primary school child.
Write an essay for your teacher about a festival in a country you should know. You should give examples of what happens at this festival. Is that acceptable? Should cab drivers be able to write 300 words on that?
Well, I think it's absolutely essential. You're working as a taxi driver or a private hire driver in one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the world. The first thing that people expect is that you speak English.
Mr. Yasser says if he fails the £180 test again, he'll be out of a job.
Simon, is this really just a row about how strict these tests are?
Well, this is just the latest skirmish in the ongoing war between Transport for London, the taxi app firms like Uber and London's traditional cabbies. TfL and City Hall have real concerns about the number of minicabs, growing number of minicabs swamping London's already congested streets. But Uber claims the bar for these tests has been set too high. Transport for London insists that the exams aren't that difficult. Drivers don't need specific knowledge of subjects like Mars. They're given stuff to read before they write their answers. It's about their ability to communicate. But Uber claimed today that based on current failure rates, as you said, something like 70,000 drivers a year could be denied licences.
All right, Simon, thank you. It's rare that a day passes without some serious delays on London's transport network, but today's signalling problems on the Northern Line had an unusual impact and knock-on effect. Along with the thousands of commuters caught up in it was the MP for Hendon, Matthew Offord. His delay meant a 90-minute debate on Iran in Parliament had to be cancelled. One MP joked it should be replaced with an emergency debate on the state of the Northern Line. Maybe there are lots of Londoners who would agree. Our political correspondent Simon Harris has the story.
Rush hour on the Northern Line and the trains are going nowhere. A single signal failure left trains stuck in tunnels, passengers forced to walk along the tracks. Bottlenecks built up at overcrowded stations, and with no room in the lifts, many commuters had little choice but to climb the stairs. The signal failure took out 2 of the busiest parts of the Northern Line, the Bank and Charing Cross branches. Services were suspended as far north as Edgware, as far south as Morden, and the disruption lasted 4 hours. It also took out a debate in Parliament.
Order, order. It's 9:30. The honourable gentleman who's introducing this debate has made communication with the authorities here to inform us that he is a victim of disruption on the Northern Line.
That meant the entire 90-minute debate on Iran's influence in the Middle East had to be cancelled.
If the honourable gentleman is not present, I have no alternative but to suspend the sitting.
Some MPs tried, without luck, to stall the parliamentary process.
Given that the Speaker's office have allowed a debate of 90 minutes duration, indicates quite clearly that this is not a singular Member of Parliament's matter of interest.
The rules are quite clear, and I think it would be wrong to try and rewrite the rules. If we were going to rewrite the rules, I'd be tempted to allow an emergency debate upon the state of the Northern Line.
The MP whose commute from hell caused all the problems is Matthew Offord, who represents Hendon in North London.
You feel very responsible, but you realise that you're completely helpless.
How embarrassing was it?
Well, I found it very embarrassing, the cost not only to the House of Commons, also to many of my colleagues who turned up, who spent hours preparing for that debate, and also the issue that we wanted to talk about, Iran particularly, is something that we haven't had the opportunity to do so.
Transport for London didn't want to talk to us today, but a letter of apology is apparently on its way to the MP. Simon Harris, ITV News, Kennington.
Next tonight, the mystery of the murder of an 80-year-old woman who was found dead on an allotment. Leah Adrisajoka was secretary of her local Allotment and Garden Association, and her body was found in a lock-up store just yards from the Met Police Training Centre in Colindale. From there, Simon Harris reports.
Half covered by a blue plastic sheet is a shabby lock-up garage, the focal point of the search for clues in the mystery of the Allotment murder. The garage is used to store garden tools, but in the early hours of Tuesday morning, it was where police found the body of the secretary of the Colindale Allotment and Garden Association. Leah Adrisajoka was 80 years old. She was a widow, a mum and a grandmother, and for some unknown reason, she was murdered. Mrs. Adrisajoka was passionate about gardening. When she failed to turn up for a gardening event in Barnet on Monday evening, there was an obvious place to look for her. 25 minutes after the alarm was raised, her body was found in the allotments. For now, the police won't say how Mrs. Adrisajoka was killed. They've no idea why she was killed, so they want to question anyone who was in or near the allotments.
There is suggestion that there may have been some rough sleepers over a period of time here. We appeal to the rough sleepers as well to come forward. We need to account for your presence within the allotments, and there's 90 or so plots within here, so potentially quite a lot of people.
Mrs. Adrisajoka lived in the next street. Today her house was being guarded by police. Neighbour Zach Goulet had known her for 30 years. Recently he'd become wary about the allotments.
In that allotment, nighttime especially, when you pass by, we used to take the dog for a walk to the park, and you could see all the people jumping over the fence. And it seemed like in all these lockups, and people just staying overnight and drinking, I don't know whether taking drugs or what.
The police have stepped up patrols around the allotments to try to reassure local residents.
Everyone's a bit fearful now of being out late and, you know, walking around, because it's not something that usually happens on your own doorstep. So it's, you know, I'm worried for my children more than anything, especially the little one.
The police can't be certain, but they believe somebody saw something or someone in the allotments which will lead them to Mrs. Adrisajoka's killer. Simon Harris, ITV News, Colindale.